G-Spice, guys, and we are live. Welcome to another Spicy Takes episode. This is episode 19. I'm just going to be waiting a little while for people to join us in, and we will get started. Let me see if this is working perfectly well on our socials and to make sure that the link is out for people to join us in. Hi, Karthik. Hi, Karthik. Hi, Karthik. So I'm just going to separate it with Sunichi. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Thank you
Yes, yes,
for
close enough.
joining in. This is the first time I'm hosting you, and thank you, of course, Karthik, for joining in back. It's always a pleasure having you here with us. So I'm just trying to confirm if we are actually live and to see that everything is working perfectly well. And for those that are just joining, can you just drop in a spicy emoji, your favorite emoji? Let me know that we are clear and that you guys can hear me. Okay, I see more people joining in. I can see some comments already. Please share the links with your friend. Let them know that we have started. And of course, if they miss any part of this, know that the space is being recorded, of course. And okay, yeah, I can see those emoji. Know that the space is being recorded and you can always go back to it. And yeah, today is a very, very important day. I'm really, really excited to talk about this because we've been shipping back to back at Spicenet, and it's always great to have more insight on how things are running on the back end and to see the progress to hear directly from those that are actively building it. For those just joining, welcome, welcome once more. And yeah, um, today's topic we are talking about the Spice Flow. We just recently released the Spice Flow that should be on Wednesday. Yeah, that is just yesterday, and this is actually a very big milestone for Spicenet for those that have been following us through our journey till now. And this is actually very, very important. One of our products is currently live on Testnet, and now we just want to talk more in depth on what the spice flow means and to directly hear from the engineers building um, this tech. Now we all know that we've seen apps struggle with distribution. Distribution is one of the should I say major problems that DeFi apps devs builders face in DeFi. Now they don't know if they should build on chain A and hope that the ecosystem grows, or they should deploy on chain B and then end up burning time, money, and effort. They also don't know, oh, will the hype leave this ecosystem? We've seen how narrative and trend move from chain to chain, and this dev waste time, waste resources, pour all in their heart to build a particular product and on an ecosystem, and before you know, the hype leaves that ecosystem. And as users are moving to other opportunities, we know that these apps are left to suffer because the users are moving to the next big opportunities. And that is why we say we all know that users do not really care about what chain they are on, they just care about the outcome they are able to actualize and the opportunities. Now devs are left to suffer on their hand, and if they also want to follow through and become cross-chain or multi-chain, they now risk spreading thin across these multi-chains and end up with fragmented liquidity and broken UX, of course. Now this is where Spice Flow comes in. Now this is Spicenet's first product, of course, an SDK and API that makes your app fuse native on any chain with just one integration. Now, this is really, really fantastic because it comes with like no redeployment, no bridges, no friction for users. Now, in this space, we are going to be unpacking what this SpiceNet really is, why distribution is everything in crypto, and how developers and users are like benefit from SpiceFlow. Now, we have Karthik Sunichi, who is the engineer that is active, who is one of the engineers that is actively building this, and of course Karthik, who is also the co-founder of Spicenet. I'm sure is not new to you guys, but for Karthik, would you like to give us a little big background how it is? You know, this is the first time we're having you on here. So is there any little intro you would like to do for the audience, or how just share your journey, how it has been building this product and how you feel seeing its life on Testnet? Can you hear me, Karthik? Hi, Karthik, can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Hello.
Okay.
Hi, sorry, can you just repeat the last part? I think you've cut
Okay.
out a bit.
So, oh, okay. So I said that if you would love to I said if you would love to, like, share a little background or journey of how it has been building, with Spicenet, if there is any little detail you want the community to know about you, and how the journey has been basically building the Spice flow, and how you feel seeing it live on Testnet.
Right, that's a long question. So, my journey with Spicenet, it's been almost a year since I started. Um, Back then, we were still working on L2 trading based chain, and then we made a few pivots and we made a few mistakes. We learned a few things, and then we eventually settled on the current Spice implementation. We found that the um, gap in the market was that chains, especially with embedded wallets, now almost every chain is fragmenting assets unintentionally, but they're still fragmenting assets across different websites, different um, ecosystems. So that means that the user has to maintain an excess of liquidity usually on multiple chains if they want to, which results in users not interacting with apps outside the few chains that they are comfortable with. One of the issues that reduces user adoption, especially for new apps. So the friction for them to change or bridge all the assets over to a new chain and then start over, that becomes a pain point. So we are trying to solve that with SpiceFlow so that all apps feel native.
Thank you very much for that. Let's do a little bit background check on, Kartik, co-founder. I would love to hear from you. What is like your perspective on this? What is like the biggest failure on how apps scale today? What will you say is that gap that is currently there on scaling apps? And I'm sure that from little that you've been able to share, or from much you've been able to share so far, with all of the times we've done AMAs, we've done the spicy takes. You've lived this firsthand, and that's part of the things that is fueling, Spicenet. So, like, just to jog our memory a little bit. Now, what is your perspective? What, like, the biggest failure on how apps scale today?
Yeah, for sure. So, let's say if you're building a blockchain application today, the status quo is that you deploy it on one chain, and then you have to make a bet on which chain you're deploying on, because that really determines your success. If the ecosystem really takes off, then you have a lot of influx of users and capital, which benefits your application. But if you make the wrong bet, if the ecosystem goes south,
Mm-hmm.
which has happened a lot of times in crypto. There are a lot of ghost towns, ghost chains, um, and when the ecosystem goes south, the developers are usually impacted because they don't really have users as well as the activity to keep their app running. Um, and in order to mitigate this, in order to expand their product offerings to multiple ecosystems and access users through multiple ecosystems. The standard is multi-chain applications wherein you normally redeploy your contracts on multiple chains, basically creating clones of the same contract, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But again, that is not really. really the best way to do it because you're normally spending a lot of time on each deployment. You have to allocate engineering effort on deploying to new chains. As we see new chains emerging, that just becomes an infinite effort. You not only have to get each deployment audited, but mostly you're also trading off the economics part of this, wherein you're fragmenting liquidity between different deployments. Wherein, let's say, liquidity in one deployment cannot really access the liquidity on another deployment. In that way, you're just creating endless silos, which is not really beneficial for the end user. Because, for example, Uniswap today has 26 deployments. If you're trading on one chain, on one Uniswap deployment, you cannot access the liquidity of another deployment. So it's a really cost intensive as well as nonsensical model. Um, yeah,
Thank you very much for that. Now let's talk about Spice Flow, which is the first product of Spicenet. Now, why start here? I know
Mhm.
that from everything you've mentioned, you've been able to talk about the gap that we are trying to solve with the Spice Flow, but why now? Why start from the Spice Flow itself?
Yeah, sure. So the simple answer is that it's a really simple problem, but yet a really large problem.
Hmm.
Um, and then it's a problem that almost every developer in crypto is facing. If you're building a blockchain app, you for sure have come across this situation at least once. So the target audience for this is incredibly large. So it just makes sense to do execute on this as the first product. Um, and then in terms of the gap, it's mostly on how can we reduce distribution costs for applications by effectively enabling them to scale their product offerings to multiple ecosystems, make their applications feel native to users at a fraction of the current cost, while not fragmenting liquidity or creating useless clones of the same contract on multiple chains.
Mm. Okay. Now let's talk about the security part because that is one thing that I feel like that is one question a whole lot of people we have in mind. Does this come at any security trade-off? Does it come at any risk for the apps integrating? What are the trade-offs in general attached to the Spice Flow?
Yeah, so in terms of security, um, of course, like we have our contracts deployed in each chain, um, which we call as adapter, but it is basically an EIP 770 delegate contract. Every transaction is basically going through that contract. So, of course, there are security risks associated with that delegate contract, of course, is why we will end up auditing that contract too before rolling it out on mainnet. Secondly, there are a lot of economic situations related to this. Let's say, for example, I mean, if you've seen the press demo, for example, um, you're using an asset on one chain as collateral to sponsor a swap between two assets on another chain. So there are a lot of gas-related issues here, which could make it unfeasible for the end user as well as slippage issues, um, because you're essentially swapping asset one asset on one chain to another asset on another chain, and then executing a trade. So there are some slippage concerns as well for that. And then of course, like centralized components like APIs, um, which is how the product is currently offered. So yeah, those are the security parts of it.
Okay,
In addition, I
thank
would
you for that.
sorry,
Okay.
just to add to that, so we are using 7702, which is a fairly debated spec, mostly because it confers a lot of power to the delegates, and also the delegates are persistent. So, wallets for most wallets, Ethereum wallets do not allow delegating to arbitrary contracts. They only allow delegating their own contracts, and the wallet JSON RPC spec doesn't even support arbitrary delegation transaction requests. So it's unclear if they are so far the positions of most wallets have been that they are not supporting them due to security issues. So that is also something to keep in mind, which is why we are considering embedded wallets, but just so that we can use the spec. But yeah, so like with any product, there are risks, and we are doing our best to mitigate them to the best to the point where they are safe enough to use. And the and yes, I just we feel that the benefits outweigh the risks.
Okay, okay, thank you. Now, I'm just curious to know from the technical, and I would love for the engineer to answer, from the technical, for the technical folks in general, how would you explain Spicenet, Spice Flow to them rather, that that they will understand to the best of their knowledge, to the engineer?
Right. So, sorry, do you want a technical or a non-technical explanation?
Technical.
So both. So if you explain it in the technical, I would also love you to break it down for our audience who are also non-technical. So you are giving us the two version, so that you are both selling to the devs and also to the users alike. Thank you.
So I'll lead with the technical explanation. I think Karthik is
Okay.
better for the overview.
Mhm.
Um, the so technically, at a low level, what we are doing is um, wrapping the actual chain calls that the application would make on the source and destination chain. So, for example, if the user visits an app on, say, Citria in this case, which is a BTC based Ethereum EVM based chain. And the user has assets on Sepolia. That is the flow that we have been developing against so far. And the user, so here we call Sepolia the source chain because the user is providing liquidity there. And Citria is the destination chain because liquidity moves to Citria via our Spice flow. So on the source chain, we'll have our escrow or the solver or some source of liquidity providers that we haven't finalized yet. But we'll between the solvers and our escrows, we'll have a source of liquidity that will fund that the user will deposit their funds into, be it any token, any supported token, of course. It can be Sepolia, it can be ETH itself, it can be USDC, USDT, or any one of these coins. In the next step would be on Citria, one of our solvers will sponsor the transaction. So the user doesn't have to hold any assets. They don't have to start holding any assets on Citria. Assets will be transferred to them as needed to complete the transaction. And then we will invoke the actual underlying calls that um, the app would have invoked anyways. So this by using the 770 to delegate flow, it ensures that we do not have to make any we have to make minimal changes. So far, we actually haven't had to make any changes to any contracts across all our integrations. The contracts can remain as is, which is very good for immutable contracts, the ones that the team doesn't have control over. And uh, it also means we do have to tweak some backend flows here and there, but that's Web 2, so it's more easily modifiable. But that this allows us to essentially do an end-to-end intent, what we are calling an intent. So the user is, instead of signing a particular action like deposit X amount on this chain, they're signing an intent that bundles together everything that says first take so much ETH from my account on Sepolia, then deposit to the escrow, and then you swap on this chain, and we fill in the blanks.
Okay, so I got some things in between. Can you break it down for the non-technical folks so that they grasp better?
Yeah, for
Sure.
sure. Let's say, okay, you want to take the, or should
No,
I
yes,
take
yes,
that?
please. No, no, go on, go on. I was just going to say,
Okay.
I think you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So, in this case, if let's say if you're executing a swap on Citria, you normally have a wallet connected. Normally, you should have a wallet set up on Citria, and you normally need to have funds on Citria. Um, and not users normally have funds scattered on multiple different chains. And if you want to execute this swap on Citria, you need to bridge your funds from different chains to Citria, set up your wallets in Citria. That's really not efficient because it wastes your time. It increases operational overhead for even individuals, but also at scale for trading firms and market makers who are engaging at scale. So what this really enables is that for you to use your existing assets on your preferred network using existing wallets that you already use to essentially access applications on other ecosystems in a fully native and bridge-free way without ever having to switch wallets, bridge assets, move to different networks. So it really provides flexibility to end users so they can reuse their assets on other chains, makes it easy for applications to onboard new users as crypto is getting inherently tribalistic, wherein users wants to stick to their own preferred ecosystems. This really creates a best of both worlds scenario, wherein you as a developer can stay on the chain that you are building on, but access users from other ecosystems using a single API integration while not having to modify your smart contracts.
Hmm. That is actually really, really explanatory. Even I understand it, and I'm sure the audience also does. And of course, please know that for those that are just joining us, know that we are talking about Spice Flow, rethinking now apps scaling across chains. And of course, we have Karthik with us, who is the co founder, and also the other Karthik, who is part of the engineering team and actively building the Spice Flow. Now, this particular question I'm about to ask, even I am very, very curious about it. How fast is it to integrate Spice Flow?
Uh, 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 uh,
Yes.
yeah, so on
So,
okay, go on.
sorry, yes. So SpiceFlow, like I said, we are aiming towards zero modification of contracts, zero modifications of supporting systems. In most cases, if the app just makes a contract call on chain that does not depend on any backend or any custom signatures, you should be able to drop in our SDK and route the call via that. So maybe a few days at most, 1 day if you're lucky. If you do have custom contracts, if you do have custom, like for example, Citria use a Spice Crest on Citria uses a custom signature-based solver flow. So that required us to make a few changes to the backend, but that even that was done in I think a week or so.
Okay. Kartik, is there anything you want to add?
No, no, no. It's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And there's another question. I want us to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. So I'll ask this question, but also to the audience, if you know you have any questions for the engineer or our co-founder, please drop them in the comments, or you have any take on this, please drop them in the comments. And also, of course, tag just one the apps you wish was available on every chain. Tag them now in the comments below. Let them know about Spice Flow. Now, we released the Spice Flow. We said it was live on Testnet yesterday. And I'm sure a lot of from the comments I could see, when can I test this? How do I feel this? Let me see it in action, right? So is it possible for you to clarify to the audience um how we are actively testing the Spice Flow? Where is there any place they can, test this product? And yeah.
Yeah, sure. One thing to clarify is that Spicer as a company is inherently a B2B company. Spicer itself is a B2B product targeting DeFi front ends, super apps, aggregators, etc. across chains. So when we say testnet, it's not user facing. It's a product that we are rolling out to our existing set of customers. Um, So, and then how people can test it is if an application goes live. I mean, not if, when an application goes live with Spiceflow integrated, they can test the product out using that application. Um, yeah, that would be the method to test it out.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And of course, the community look out for any app that is that SpiceFlow is being integrated with, and of course, you'll be able to test this out in real life. Now, also, from the comments, I could see questions about someone is saying that they did not really grasp the security aspects that you explained. So if you could, go back a little bit and re-explain for them to fully understand the security aspect of Spice Flow. Karthik, can you hear me?
I can know. Yeah. Um, so we have a core contract which is basically an EIP 7702 contract. So there's two things for that. Of course, like there can be internal vulnerabilities in that contract, which we will get addressed in the form of audits before the product is rolled out to mainnet. And then secondly, as Karthik mentioned, that delegating to arbitrary contracts can lead to a lot of problems if the contract is malicious and trying to do things that you would normally not authorize. So think of EIP Sensitive as a protocol wherein you can authorize someone else to do something on behalf of you. Um, so, for example, if the contract is malicious, it can do things. Let's say it can place trades that you would normally not want to do, and all of those things. Which is why wallets typically do not, normal wallets like MetaMask, Rabbi, etc. They do not support delegating to arbitrary contracts, um, excluding their own, because it is a trust issue. The natural resolution would be that users get a pop-up on their wallet before they delegate to arbitrary contracts which are not verified. So, for example, you may see have seen in the industry that, for example, if you're trading a newly listed meme coin, the deck shows you that this is a new token trade with safety, right? So similar standard would have to be adopted. Apart from that, embedded wallets like Privy, Dynamic, etc., they support delegating to arbitrary third-party contracts like the one that we have, like we have the one that we have made. And yeah, that is the risks and considerations of the YAPI sensitive mechanism.
Okay, I hope the person that asked the question better, I hope he has been able to answer your question. And to the engineer, I would love you to answer this question on screen because you were the one who really talked about the EIP 7702. So Dexterity is asking, can you dive into how the EIP 7702 enables the atomic execution in Spice Flow?
Yes, I was actually coming to that. That's a very nice question. And 7702 allows us to do atomicity in a way that hasn't been really possible before. There was multi-call, but that still relied on contracts having the implementation for multi-call. But 7702 allows us to essentially bundle together multiple transactions, multiple so on Ethereum right now, a transaction can only interact with one top level contract, as in can only make one contract call, which is as opposed to a chain like Solana that was built ground up to support multiple instructions in the same contract. Ethereum does not support that right now. A few forks do, but that's non-standard. Core EVM only supports one contract call. What 7702 allows us to do is wrap those contract calls individually and then execute them in a single transaction with a delegate. So you take all the individual calls that you would have made, the different contracts, bundle them together into one big array, and then send it to the delegate execution contract. and delegate it to your address. So your address essentially can make those calls in rapid succession in the same block without any third party or any custom requirements for from the contracts themselves. The benefit is that it eliminates any possibilities of back running or front running or arbitrage, because it everything happens in the same transaction. There is nowhere for other users to even if they can change the order a bit, but otherwise all of the calls that you specify will happen in a single transaction atomically. And it also simplifies things for us greatly because we don't have to worry about atomicity on a chain level. So we don't have to worry about what happens if the especially for refunds, because if you fund the user on the chain and then the user's transaction fails, then you need to be able to recover the funds or need to retry. And that is something that because of EIP 0702 we don't have to worry about.
Thank you very much for that. Dexterity, I hope your question has been able to be answered. Coming up to another question on screen from Alo. Karthik, I'd love for you to answer that. The person is asking, I'd also like to know how Spice Flow will generate revenue for Spicenet.
Sure. This is currently one way, but there'll be another one. First of it is execution fees, since we're a brokerage network. Um, for every transaction that we execute, there'll be fees that we charge at the top line. The fees is currently variable and not decided, but um, that is one way. Secondly, we also plan to enable a way wherein, for example, you could put up collateral on one network to borrow another collateral type on another network and execute some DeFi action on that chain. And from this, we will also earn liquidation fees from the borrow if your position is liquidated. And also, in general, interest payments from the borrower. That is the second revenue stream, um, which is basically earning fees on the margin financing that we provide to our institutional client base. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Alo, I hope your question has been answered. Um, so guys, if you do have more questions, please ask them in the comments so they can answer. So I'll just be asking my last question from my own end. Now, what does the future of Spice Flow look like? Or should I rephrase by saying, what does the future of the two products that Spicenet is building, what does it look like? Let's say we fast forward from 3 years from now. What would the word fragmentation even exist anymore, or do users just interact with apps seamlessly without even thinking about it?
Yeah,
Kartik?
for sure. So, hello. Yeah, okay, yeah, for sure. So, I think the end goal would be for ma- 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 market participants like developers, trading desks, market makers, and so on, for them to be able to essentially access the activity state of our DeFi venues that exist today across all networks without being able to build custom integrations for each venue, as well as redeploying to multiple chains, which is a problem that we talked about already, with built-in portfolio margining for your DeFi positions and collateral assets. So you can essentially cross-margin your DeFi positions to execute advanced DeFi strategies in such a way that you're enhancing capital efficiency and mobilizing passive positions, which were previously illiquid. So the goal is obviously to make connectivity to DeFi venues easier, distribution more simpler, while enhancing capital efficiency and operational flexibility for end users like you and me, but also for more sophisticated participants.
Okay, thank you very much. Fagosh is saying 3 years is such a long time. Yeah, you're right. We believe that 6 months from now, we should be able to see a whole lot of changes with the products that we are building at Spicenet. Now, So Mota is asking, should we expect? So I'm just going to put it on screen. So Mota is asking, should we expect like a demo to actually test Spicenet, or we should hope on other projects integrating Spicenet to release their testnet before we'll be able to see or feel what Spicenet is?
Yeah,
Karthik would like to take that.
yeah, sure. So no demo is actually planned right now. Um, but we have a lot of applications already wanting and working to integrate us already. In the coming few weeks, we hope to showcase some of these apps live on public testnets of their own blockchains, wherein end users can go and actually try out those applications with Spicenet integrated. Um, India, that is the goal. And if you're a developer seeing this, the doc's already live. And I've also linked my Telegram in the doc, so feel free to hit me up if you want to integrate. Yeah.
Okay, we got more question. This is from Crypto Degen. I would love for the engineer to answer this. Does the SDK support modular adoption, or do teams have to integrate the full suite? Can you guys hear
Hmm.
me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So fair question. As of now, there are no modules per se. There is just whether you choose to route your transaction via Spiceflow or not. Um, if you are asking about the implementation itself, we do plan on releasing core SDK and a UI SDK. A UI SDK would be full-fledged, a UI component you can drop in, while the core SDK will be internally used by the UI SDK, so you can replicate the same functionality entirely within your site, should you choose to. Um, but yes, so we are trying to support on the front end side, we are trying to support moderate adoption of the packages themselves. But as for the functionality, so far we only have one function. So yes, either you have it or not.
Also, one more thing is that currently we're also adding support for multiple embedded wallets. So developers have the flexibility and the modularity on choosing what wallet provider they want to go with. Or if you're already using an existing wallet provider, you can just stick with them. But that is something that we'll also roll out in the coming weeks too. Currently, we only support Privy.
Yes, Beta is getting a little bit more technical. He seems to be very, very interested in the EIP. So back to you, engineer. So Beta is asking the EIP 7691 integration alongside EIP 7702 in SpiceFlow. I think you will have a better understanding of the question.
Right. So that's a good question. Honestly, I have to Google. I am Googling 7691 right now. I am not aware of the spec. So I'm just skimming through the EIP. It looks like it's about just increasing the throughput of blobs. Um, so far, we aren't actually using um, blobs. Um, so I think the question is a bit moot. Um,
I mean, it's not even relevant, right? Because blobs are an L2 scaling solution,
yes.
which is not really relevant to 7702, which is like a account abstraction sort of solution.
Okay. So I can see a lot of questions. I'm sure the community actually came really prepared, showing that they've been waiting for this. So Dexterity is asking, what is the spiciest challenge you have faced so far while building the spice flow?
Oh,
Yes. So
um,
uh,
okay, go
the
on.
one we are so yes, the one we are
So I'll love to
facing
hear
right
from you.
now is that we are working with a chain that does not have 7700 support. and apps on the chain really want to integrate with us. We want to help them build out the integrations so it's ready once it gets to mainnet, once the upgrade does drop. So we had to set up and it's a bit technical, but we set up an anvil fork of the chain, and then I set up a block scout explorer for the fork. Um, and then we are integrating against the animal that is forking the main chain. So it was a that took a bit of time to get all the moving parts in sync, but and right now we are still dealing with a few RPC rate limiting issues, but that should be fixed soon. But yeah, so far that's the one that we're currently dealing with.
Okay. Another question from the community. This is from Crypto Degen. Since collateral is encrypted, what mechanisms ensure it can be locked in case of errors? Karthik?
Yeah, so of course the escrow contract has to be audited, of course. The way it would work is that if the transaction was successfully executed, then the collateral is credited to Spicenet, which is when the transaction is settled. And if the transaction on the destination chain for some reason fails due to gas or incorrect call data, then we're currently implementing a retry and revert mechanism wherein users can retry the transaction optionally. If not, the funds would be refunded back to the user, and the user can then decide how to move forward. And then, of course, the contract will also have to be audited.
That is really, really beautiful. Thank you for that answer. And I'm sure that is all the questions so far from the community. And I believe that this has been able to create more clarity to what Spice Flow is and isn't. And of course, I can see somebody asking when they can't wait to test. And of course, Kartik already said a demo is planned, and you'll be able to use Spicenet even without knowing that you're using Spicenet in real time. And we can't wait for you to experience how it feels. Okay, guys, we've spent over 45 minutes here. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you, Karthik, Sunichi, for being here. Thank you for providing the insight. And of course, Karthik, thank you for your insight. Thank you for breaking down a whole lot to the audience and to our community. And now to our community, you've heard from those that are actively building this product. Make sure that if there is any app that you feel needs this, make sure to reach out to them and connect us to them. And of course, we're going to be reaching out to them. So tag them. You can also tag them in the comments, and just create that soft landing between us. And yes, I would love us to do a little bit for us. I would love for us to quote tweet, because now I believe that you guys have like in-depth knowledge of what the spice flow is. So I would love for you to quote tweet this space and give your own personal perspective of how you feel about spice flow and what you think is going to solve in with your own POV. Tell us, share to the community. You guys are the way we get the word out and get more integration. So thank you once again for joining in. See you in the next episode of Spicy Takes. Bye guys, stay spicy.
Bye bye.